Okay, we're going to jump right in. I want to get you the central idea. So just in case some of you just tune me out, right? It happens, right? You're figuring out what's on Netflix, what you're going to pop in the microwave on the way home. I mean, all those things that are really, really, really important. So just in case, it happens that you're thinking about your favorite team today, I want you to get this one thing. We want to get the central idea. We want to lead with this. We need to both give and receive forgiveness in order to be reconciled with and grow to be more like God, grow in God. We need to understand our forgiveness so that it changes us. The purpose of forgiveness is to change you. We have to do the work of forgiveness so that after we're done forgiving, we're a different person. Okay? That's the central idea. We need to give and receive forgiveness in order to be reconciled with God. Let's read our passage. Now, this is the Lord's Prayer, right? If you know it, say it along. If you're like me, you've memorized it in a different version, say it along anyway. We don't care. This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom and the glory and the power forever and ever. Some versions don't have that. That's okay. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sin. So, what's happening here, right? Jesus is giving us instructions on how to pray. That's the Lord's Prayer. That's what we just recited. And then follows it with this passage, verses 14 and 15, about forgiveness, expanding on what he's already done and instructed us to do, especially in verse 12. So we're looking at verse 12 today, right? And then we see verses 14 and 15. And there's this connection between our forgiveness by God, which is our biggest need, right? Forgive us our debts, right? That's our biggest need, and our forgiveness of others, which again is not our biggest desire. That's not what we want to do normally, right? So now we've got a problem. Now we've got a problem because we've hooked something that we really need to something that we really don't want. Now, I want to stop here for a second for a footnote for the theologians in the congregation. And you know who you are. This is the forgiveness of sanctification, growth in the Christian life. It is not the forgiveness of justification, which is our salvation. Okay? How do we know this? We know that there was no way that we would be able to forgive everybody in our lives before we came to salvation. That's just not possible. That's just physically impossible, right? And it would mean that somehow we had worked for our salvation, and we know we can't do that. Rather, this passage is saying if we can't forgive, we're not able to grow in sanctification. Nor is this passage about losing our salvation, because, again, we know that that's not possible. However, I just want to point out something. If we're struggling to forgive because we don't believe forgiveness is all that important, then we have to ask ourselves about our justification, about our salvation, because forgiveness is really important to God. And therefore, forgiveness is really important to us. All right, that ends my theological dissertation. But we've learned a lot of things over our time in church, and some of those things are wrong. And so it's really important with forgiveness that we do some time in definitions. And so we're going to take some time here to walk through some definitions of what forgiveness is and what it is not and where it comes from. Remember, it's important to understand. Forgiveness is at least as complicated a concept as love, right? Forgiveness is at least as complicated as love. We talk about loving wings. We talk about loving our wives. We talk about loving God. 3 very different things, right? Forgiveness is at least as complicated as that. It's not less complicated than that. And so, the English language only gives us one word apiece, right? We just have love. We just have forgiveness. But we need to kind of understand forgiveness, and we need to understand what it means in order to be able to understand how it impacts us. So let's do some definitions. Forgiveness has 2 perspectives: giving and receiving. So first we're going to look at receiving forgiveness, right? To receive forgiveness is to admit you're wrong, to agree with the person that you've offended, that you have offended them, and request the wrong be removed so that the relationship can be restored, right? And it's also acknowledging that the other party doesn't have the obligation to do so. You're actually making a request. You can't demand forgiveness. This is part of the complexity, right? I can't come to you and Cleo and say, hey, Cleo, busted you in the mouth last week, but you got to forgive me. You got to. Cleo says, no, I don't have to forgive you. Matter of fact, I might wait and bust you back. We'll talk, bro. Okay. To grant forgiveness, which Cleo didn't do, to grant forgiveness is to, with full knowledge of the consequences, and that's important, full knowledge of the consequences, release your demand, your rightful demand for justice for all time. It's to release that demand for justice for all time. We resist the temptation for revenge, to repay evil for evil. Vengeance is, come on, make Med proud. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Oh, okay, good. You did well, Med. Vengeance is venomous, which we remember from 6 weeks ago. Is mine, saith the Lord. Excellent. When we forgive someone, we pray for them. When we forgive someone, we help them. We ask others to help them. We do not keep bringing up the offense. Love keeps no record of wrongs. Okay? So that's a definition of what forgiveness is, and let's make sure that we also get the purpose of forgiveness. The purpose of forgiveness is a reconciliation of the relationship, to bring the relationship back together. We cannot go back to the way things were. We have to go forward to something better because forgiveness has been granted and received. We can't go back. We can't just, hey, let's just go back to the way it was. I can't go back because you might hurt me there again. We need to go forward to an understanding in forgiveness. We need to go forward to a better relationship. So if that's what forgiveness is, giving and receiving of forgiveness, let's talk about what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not. Asking forgiveness is not the same as saying you're sorry. Saying you're sorry is a statement. Doesn't require anything of the offended person. I can say, hey, I'm sorry. Sorry, Cleo. And walk away. Asking forgiveness is making a request that the offended party doesn't actually need to grant. So you've given control over to somebody else, right? The control for forgiveness is now in the person I'm requesting it from, a person who I've hurt, right? So it's not the same. If you think that the two are the same, try the next time you're going to say sorry, try asking for forgiveness and waiting for a response from somebody you've hurt. It feels very different. Second thing, what it is not. Forgiveness is not an emotional state. It's not a feeling. It's not a mood. I could say I'm in a forgiving mood. This is what makes forgiveness so complicated as a concept. But actual forgiveness is not an emotional state. It's not a feeling. It's a mood. It's not a mood. Forgiveness is an act of will. Every time you are reminded about the offense, you respond with the truth. You acknowledge that the offense has been released for all time. That is the act of will of forgiveness. It's not emotion. Oftentimes when I'm reminded of the offense, my emotion is not a forgiving emotion. I do not feel forgiving. But the discipline of forgiveness is to say, I've released this. I know I've released this. I speak the truth when I say I've released this. Forgiveness is not, third thing, forgiveness is not a removal of the consequences of the sin, including anger at the sin, including punishment for sin. It's also not a denial of the sin. We don't have the ability to call something okay that God has said is not okay, right? We don't have that ability. So it is not a removal of the consequences. If forgiveness were a removal of the consequences, friends, we wouldn't be here. We'd be back in the Garden of Eden. We would have never left. We'd be eating from every tree. Oh, forgive me, God. Sorry about that. No, I'm good without the fig leaves. I'm just, it's not a removal of the consequences. We have the consequences of sin. We live in a fallen world. Right? We have forgiveness from God, but we live in the fallen world. So, now that we know what it is and what it is not, let's ask the obvious question, well, where does it come from? Well, it doesn't come from inside us, right? Nobody, look, you and I, we together, even if I wasn't really good at it, I could make a living off of writing love songs, right? Like everybody writes love songs. Who writes forgiveness songs? Go ahead, think of one. Go ahead, take your time. Like, you're going to come up with one of them somewhere in the rest of this time, but you're going to get one, but it's going to be the exception that proves the rule. Forgiveness is not an instinct of human beings. This is not something that we instinctively do. We love to be loved, but we do not love to forgive. Okay? Forgiveness, therefore, has to come from God. The idea of forgiveness, the motivation of forgiveness, the expression of the need to forgive, the model of how to do it. We've already talked about the celebration that we're going to do later, about celebrating how we have forgiveness and therefore reconciliation with God because of the work of Jesus Christ. It's all from God. At its root, forgiveness is actually an act of faith, right? At the core of it, we say, we believe that God is bigger than the offense. Either my offense of God, because I've sinned and I'm asking him for forgiveness, or Reggie's offense of me, and Reggie has never offended me. So Reggie's offense of me, I'm saying God's bigger than that. Right? No matter what it is, we say God is bigger than the offense that I'm feeling right now, the offense that I need to be forgiving. Okay. So with those definitions kind of in our pocket, right? As we say, we have those definitions in our pocket. Let's ask the question, what happens when we don't forgive others? Because remember, we're looking at the scariest verse in the Bible, which says that we've connected God's forgiveness of us with our forgiveness of others. What happens when we don't forgive other people? Well, the Bible gives us a very clear illustration of this, and that is in the parable of the unmerciful servant. So this is Jesus talking to his disciples, and this is in Matthew 18, 21 through 35. And I'm going to read it through. It's a parable that some of you know, and it goes like this. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered and said, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times, or sometimes people have heard 7 times 7, or 70 times 7, or just a big old number, right? Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. As he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he, his wife, and his children, and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. But when that servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay back what you owe, he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, be patient with me, and I will pay it back. Heard that before, didn't we? We heard that before. But he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said. I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servants just as I had on you? In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or your sister from your heart. That scary verse just got scarier, right? We didn't get better here. Like, we illustrated again how bad things can get. Now, this is a parable. So as we deal with parables, the key question that we have to put in our heads is, do I get the point? Parables are a story that are told for a point. There's a reason that they're told. Here, we're given the reason right up front, right? Peter comes to Jesus. It's a direct answer to Peter's question. Peter comes to Jesus. How many times should I forgive someone who's offended me? And Peter gets all spiritual, right? 7 times? Like 7 times? Like, really? Just saying. How many times should I forgive someone who has offended me? So this is a direct answer. This story is a direct answer to that question. How many times should I forgive somebody? Jesus responds with a whole lot, a much bigger number. And Peter, I'm guessing he is kind of crushed. He's like, oh, I was on times 6. In parables, there's always a hook. There's always at least one hook, one piece that is unusual. And in this particular parable, the piece that's really unusual, that draws us in, is the debt of the servant. It's massive. This is a massive debt. In today's terms, in today's money, this is approximately $6 billion. Billion. It is unpayable. Okay? It's a massive debt. And we can surmise, we can kind of guess here, right? That it's also likely criminal, right? The only way you run up a debt like that is you're gambling or you're stealing, but likely you're doing both. So this is a massive and probably criminal debt. And so at first we see the king, and the king, sells everybody off, and we're like, yeah, that was pretty harsh. No, it probably wasn't, right? Now, the servant receives forgiveness, but doesn't give forgiveness. That's pretty obvious, right? He receives $1 billion cancellation of debt. He does not give forgiveness to the person who uses the same words with him. Be patient with me, I'll pay it back. The contrast is that the other servant owes him 100 silver coins. Today's money, that's approximately $12,000, right? Approximately. Now, you're saying, hey, $12,000, I could do something with $12,000. I'm buying myself that's a lot of rent, right? That's a decent used car, right? So $12,000 is not an insignificant debt, but it's a payable debt. That's the important thing. The debt could be paid, but it would take patience. You'd have to be patient with me. I've got to pay my own rent, plus I got to get you your money back. So, we all understand debt here in America, right? So I'm going to eventually be able to pay you back, but you have to be patient with me. So the debt was payable, but it was going to take some patience. Everybody knows this is wrong. This is not a gray area. This is not something that had to be debated. All of the rest of the servants get this is wrong. This is really wrong. And we can understand that. Oftentimes all we want, all we're asking for, all we need is a little patience. Everybody knows it's wrong. But get this is the other hook. The consequence for the unmerciful servant is hideous. He was going to be sold. That's bad. But now he's thrown in to jail to be tortured until the debt is repaid. The debt's unpayable. He's being tortured to death. This is a death sentence. He's never going to get out of prison, ever. Nobody's going to pay his way out. It's over for him. So the consequences are hideous. And to wrap here, what's the point? What's the point of the parable? The point of the parable is Jesus says to Peter, stop counting. Stop counting. I don't care. If you're on number 62 and you're looking for 77, you're in trouble. That's the problem. Stop counting. That's what Peter needs to hear. That's what we need to hear. So it's reasonable for us to ask this question: why does our forgiveness of others have such dire consequences? We've just seen illustrated. We've read that our forgiveness from God, our biggest need, is connected to our forgiveness of others. We've seen in this illustration what the connection is and how dire the consequences are, how bad the consequences are when we don't forgive. So why does it have such dire consequences? Why is it so bad? Well, to answer that question, let's ask another question. Let's just illustrate this question. What does our unforgiveness, our unwillingness to forgive, those things that we haven't forgiven, what does that look like to God? You see, you and I, each of us, and I mean us, me too, right? Each of us has a bag. And we keep in that bag the things, the offenses that we haven't forgiven. We put them in there one after another. He did me wrong. She did me bad. I was abused. All of it just goes into that bag when we don't forgive. And we keep this bag of unforgiveness. And we think it's really, really important. That really important things are in that bag. This is my bag. This is important to me. These things are important to who I am. And we put our unforgiveness in a bag. And we hold on to it. From time to time, we open it up just to check our victim status. Oh, yeah. Got some things in that bag. We might pull one out, and say, hey, I need to trade this for some sympathy. Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah? Yeah, right? These things are important to us. We think they're important. And we have a death grip on them because they're so important to us. We just grab on all of it. But here's what happens, friends. Because in reality, it's not a bag full of treasures that we believe. It's a bag full of garbage. Because when we don't forgive, our unforgiveness turns into bitterness, right? And what's really in that bag is not treasures that I open up. And what's really in that bag is garbage. I mean nasty garbage, like fish from a week ago. month-old chicken, okay? About 3 dozen dirty diapers, like medical waste, right? And for some inexplicable reason, the long dead carcass of a skunk. We don't know why. We don't know how it got there, but that's what it is, right? This bag, our bag of bitterness, is actually garbage. And every time we open it up, boy, it smells, right? And worse, it gets worse. It gets worse. It gets worse. You know why? Because this bag has been set out in the sun. It's kind of bloated a little bit, right? Okay. And then, you know what else? It gets even worse than that because our bag has a leak in it. And we are leaking garbage juice out of our bag of bitterness everywhere we go. We do it when we go to the store. We do it when we go to the job. We do it when we go to work. And when we're home, we do it when we go to church. Like it happens in church, right? Our bag of bitterness is just leaking. Just junk all over. It's just making you gag. It's that bad. And yet, we got a death grip on it because it's really important to us. And we're taking that bag everywhere we go. Leaking, drip, we crawl into bed with the bag. My spouse says, really? In the bed? Friends call us up. Hey, Sam, we're going to have a party. Can you come on over? Hey, yeah, I'm going to be there. Sam, can you leave the bag at home? Oh, my bag? I can't leave my bag at home. It's got important stuff in that. Somebody might steal the bag. No, bag's coming with me. Yeah, Sam, because the last time you came, we had to, like when you left, we had to burn the couch. It was that bad. Wow. I can't leave my bag at home. I'm probably going to have to put something in it from your party. Saying, that's the bag. That's the bag. Okay? Here's the problem. When we come to Jesus, when we come to God, and we say, God, I need forgiveness. I need to be cleaned. I need to be clean so that I can be in your presence. God says, really? Do you want to be cleaned? Oh, yes, Lord, I want to be cleaned. Then you need to let go of the bag. You got to let go of the bag. Oh, not my bag. My bag's got important stuff in it. My bag's a reminder of some of the things that people have done to me, you know. You got to let go of the bag. When we come and ask for forgiveness, when we come and ask for cleansing, and we're still have a death grip on our bag of bitterness, God says, I'd love to clean you. I can clean you from part of it, but part of it's your bag. And you're making a mess, and you're stenching up. We cannot be cleaned by God. We cannot receive God's forgiveness of us when we are not able to forgive others because we've got our bag. And God is saying to us, it's time to let go of the bag. Just time to let go of the bag. So if we're going to do that, what do I need to do right now? Here's the nuts and bolts of it. What do I need to do now to have forgiveness as a discipline? We're going to start by asking for forgiveness from God for my bitterness to others, for my unwillingness to forgive other people. In order to do that, we need to understand that God has forgiven us infinitely more than we can ever forgive someone else. God has already forgiven me more than if everybody in this room offended me every single minute of every single day for the rest of my life. God's already forgiven me infinitely more. So we need to start by asking forgiveness for our unforgiveness. In order to do that, we need to, number 2, ask God to fill us with both the desire, because remember, some of you are still trying to think about the forgiveness song. I know it. Some of you are still like, I think it goes like this. No, it's just not there. Don Henley did it, and then that was it. Ask God to fill you with the desire, because that doesn't come from inside of us, and the strength, because it's also not inside of us, to forgive, to practice forgiveness as discipline, as the discipline. Not wait for the emotion to hit you, and then I'm going to I'm just going to be kind. And maybe, for some of us, that's just never going to happen, and other of us, we weren't in our right minds when it happened. No. Forgiveness as discipline, every time you are reminded of a past offense, every single time you're reminded of that offense, you speak the truth that you have already given up your claim for justice, for righteous justice for all time. We cannot do this on our own. This is not instinctual. We can only do this with God's help. To do that kind of work, we can only do with God's help. Third thing we need to do is we need to ask God to reveal to us the people that we need to forgive. And some of you are saying, hey, I'm all good because I already know. I have my list. I got my people. Yeah, you do. And I hope I'm not on that list, right? I just hope I'm not on that list. But I'll bet that you know people. You know people on the list that you need to forgive. But I'm willing to bet you don't know all of them. I'm willing to bet that there's at least one person or two people or three people, maybe 10 people in your life somewhere that have touched your life that you need to forgive, and you don't even realize it yet. You need to ask, I need to ask, we need to ask God to reveal to us the people that we need to forgive. Lastly, we're going to need to forgive people who either will not. This is where this is the hard part. This is where it gets hard. Okay? We're going to need to forgive people who will not or cannot ask us for forgiveness. Some don't care. We have to forgive them anyway. Some can't comprehend. Like they just can't get it in their brain that they need forgiveness. They need forgiveness from us, that they've offended us. We have to forgive them anyway. Some are dead. You have to forgive them anyway. I have to forgive them anyway. They're gone. They're never going to ask our forgiveness. We have to forgive them anyway. That's hard. There's no reason to sugar that pill, right? That's hard. That's hard work, right? But remember, the forgiveness isn't the removal of consequence. You can forgive somebody and not have the relationship that you wanted. You can forgive somebody and still have consequences. You're still estranged. You're still apart. You're not able to do the things that you used to be able to do. These are all truths about forgiveness. Okay? But we have to forgive people anyway. That's what God's saying to us. He's saying, look, if you want to receive my forgiveness, you have to be willing to forgive. So our summary is this. We need to both give forgiveness and receive forgiveness. We need to do both so that we can be reconciled with God and so that we can be restored in our relationships with each other. We need both. We need to give and we need to receive. And in order to do this, we have to let go of our bag of bitterness so that God can actually clean us clean, actually get us clean. If we fail to forgive, it stunts our Christian growth. We cannot grow to be more like God. We cannot grow to be more Christ-like if we're not forgiving, because it's at the core of what Christ did for us. So with that, I'd like to transition to communion.